اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم لك الحمد على كل حال. اللهم إنا نستعينك ونستغفرك ونؤمن بك ونتوكل عليك. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اغفر لي جميع ما مضى من ذنوبي وعصمني فيما بقي من عمري وارزقني عملا زاكيا ترضى به عني. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amin Ya Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, we are going to go deeper into Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'een. This is the ayah that is said to be the middle ayah between the two halves in which this surah has been divided. And we are inshallah going to go beyond the section that where we stopped last time in terms of the benefits of this ayah. And our resources today are going to expand from Razi's tafsirs to Baidawi, as well as going back to Imam al-Tabari. There are issues connected with this ayah which started to happen when the questions arose in the third generation. This is quite fascinating if you look at it historically, sequentially. When the Prophet ﷺ was on this earth, his light, his radiance illuminated the hearts, and the discursive questions did not arise. The minds were illuminated by his presence, by his blessed presence on this dunya. And people did not ask questions about Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'een. They did not ask questions about why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want us to worship him, because he is as-samad. He doesn't need anyone, and yet he is asking us to worship. They didn't ask why Iyyaka na'budu is before Iyyaka nasta'een, that we worship you alone and we seek your help. The question about why we are seeking help after we saying we worship you, because worship itself needs his help. So these questions arose, and then other questions arose, and those questions are still here with us. That's why they are not just historical, redundant, theoretical, philosophical discussions. They are very much present in the minds of many Muslims who have said Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and yet they are not willing to perform actions required because of these two statements. So out of every fourth person now saying Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, those who are actually performing the salah, which is the fundamental first requirement in terms of ibadah, it's quite small. So the question is, if they have the ability to perform salah, ability to perform salah is equal for everyone who has said Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan. And those who actually do that and those who don't, what is the difference? Is it Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'een? When we say Iyyaka nasta'een, we seek help from you alone, is that the tipping of the balance, that those who are unable to perform the salah, they are deprived of Allah's help. These are some of the questions which arose, and I believe they are still with us. So another fundamental connection between the two halves of the surah and this particular ayah, which is in the middle, as many scholars have said, is the switch from the third person to the direct address. Meaning, so far we have said, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. All of these are in the addressing the one who is ghaib. And with this ayah, Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'een, we are now directly addressing. Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'een, we are directly addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is as if we have come in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We mentioned his Rahman and Rahim, his two names of mercy. We acknowledge that he is the Malik of the Yawmiddin, he is the owner of the day of Deen. And then from that absence, we come into his presence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows his ibad. He knows that we are all short on many things. So he gave us this surah as if to teach us that there are stages in the path. So the first stage is the remembrance, reflection, contemplation of his names, acceptance of his the bounties. All of these are statements of acknowledging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that is followed up with as if we are conversing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now. And there are lots of reflections on this. Number one is that this is not uncommon in the Arabic language in itself to switch from the first person to the second person to the third person. But in the Qur'an, this aspect of the Arabic language has been perfected. And there is nothing comparable to this kind of perfection. حَتَّى إِذَا كُنْتُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ وَجَرَيْنَ بِهِمْ. Like in Surah Yunus, we have until when you are in the ships and they sail with them. حَتَّى إِذَا كُنْتُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ وَجَرَيْنَ بِهِمْ. See how until when you are in the ships and they sail with them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Fatir, وَاللَّهُ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ الرِّيَاحَ فَتُثِيرُ سَحَابًا فَسُقْنَاهُ. And Allah is He who sends the winds and they raise a cloud, then we lead it. Sahaban فَسُقْنَاهُ, we lead it. There are examples from the Jahiliya poetry as well, but we'll skip those. Iyyaka na'budu, Iyyaka is a disconnected pronoun, meaning it's not attached. And there are lots of discussions about the grammatical aspect of Iyyaka, whether Iyya is separate from Ka. Iyyaka So iyaka, iya, just iya can be connected with ka or ha or ya. Iyaya, iyaka, iyaha. These can be affixed to iya. Iya itself is just iya. And then we can attach the first, second, or the third person respectively to it. Like we have ara'aytaka, ara'aytaka, meaning imagine yourself. So there are discussions. So iyyaka, we just want to make this word our. Last time, if you remember, we said that iyyaka has hasr in it. It has boundary is built into when we say iyyaka, we actually say you alone we worship. There is no one else. And iyyaka has a built-in hasr. Just for those who are interested in the variant readings, it has been also been pronounced as ayyaka instead of iyyaka, ayyaka bi fathil hamza, yani with the fath, with the on the hamza, and also as hayyaka with ha. And these are the variant readings. And iyaka, hiyaka, these are the beauties of the recitation. What I really wanted to do today in this session is to make na'budu, iyaka na'budu, our own. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us more time, and we only have the time we have, but if He opens our hearts to nasta'in. So one question which was raised last time, I think we answered that, and perhaps we are now at a stage where translation is not an issue. Yani, we said slave and slavery, they have negative connotations, and we accept that. They have negative connotation. And we also, I was thinking about this question. This is a beautiful question, mashallah. I was thinking that how we are unable to empty out the content of a word in English language, even for ourselves. And how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just emptied out the content of the Jahiliyyah Arabic when He revealed the Qur'an. In one stroke, everything was taken away. The concepts of the Jahiliyyah, so the language of the Arabs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just purified it. We have such limitations, and I had mentioned how Iqbal had used abd, but also in the Urdu translation, some of the better Urdu translations, instead of ghulam, they use banda. Banda is perhaps not so negative as ghulam is in our associations. Nevertheless, the question that we really want to address is that of ibadah. Iyyaka na'budu, abad. So translation is one thing, but the concept is another thing. Do we want to be the abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or do we want to worship Him from the outside? Like just, so the difference between the two stages is very important to understand. So first of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself says that إِنَّ الَّذِينَ عِندَ رَبِّكَ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِهِ. Those who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they don't they don't have the arrogance of not worshipping him, an ibadatihim, they don't. So what really can help us in terms of breaking the barrier of slavery and slavishness and servanthood, etc., is to really just see who are the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or do we want to be among them, or do we just want to say, well, no, I'm not a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So, وَإِن كُنتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ أَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِّثْلِهِ. So, ala abdina, this is a reference to the Prophet ﷺ. أن ينزل الله من فضله على من يشاء من عباده. He reveals, he sends down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down min fadlihi, his bounties upon whichever of his ibad, whichever of his slaves. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. And when my servants ask you about me, tell them I am qareeb, I am near. So, وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ وَاللَّهُ رَءُوفٌ بِالْعِبَادِ وَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَاللَّهُ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. There are lots of ayahs in the Qur'an which tell us that the highest station we can reach is to be the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I know it, especially for the young people, for our children perhaps, this word carries deep connotations, and they just get stuck on the translation. But can we not just transcend the translation? Because there is, in English language, there is no equivalent of abd. قُلْ لِعِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ إِلَّا عِبَادِكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ إِنَّ عِبَادِي لَيْسَ لَكَ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانٌ. Yani, the shaitan has no power on my ibadi, on my servants, on my slaves. Nabbi ibadi anni ana al-ghafur rahim. Tell my slaves that I am indeed Ghafur and Rahim. So, daraballahu mathalan abdan mamlukan la yaqdiru ala shayin. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the parable of the real slave who has absolutely no power over everything, who has nothing, like he's literally slave, as opposed to his ibad. So, as Iqbal said, one sajda takes you away from thousands of other sajdas. I mean, this is what we can internalize, and if there is any problem with the translation with any of our young children, we can just, or even for general people, whoever has a problem with the translation, do we want to be like the real ibad? Zurriyatan man hamalna ma'a Nuhu innahu kana abdan shakura. Nuh alayhi salam is called abdan shakura. Innahu kana bi ibadihi khabiran basira. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Nur, and he sees his ibad. وَقُلْ كَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ بِعِبَادِهِ خَبِيرًا بَصِيرًا. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. Do we want to be like in the company of the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So this is quite clear. وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. Ibad of Rahman, the slaves of Rahman, are those who walk on this earth in humility. So there is a difference between state of servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the state of standing against him. Yani, think the fundamental difference between Adam alayhi salam and Iblis at the beginning of the whole story of our existence was that Adam alayhi salam recognized his abd, his abudiya, his slavehood, his servanthood. He recognized that he is the slave, his whole being is in the power of the Creator. And the Iblis, they were both commanded to do something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded his Adam alayhi salam not to eat from the tree, and he commanded Iblis to prostrate. The command was given because they were both creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they both disobeyed. When Adam alayhi salam obeyed, he realized his mistake immediately, and he said, he sought forgiveness. Whereas Iblis was told, was asked, why did you not prostrate? He became arrogant. And he said, you created him from clay and you created me from fire. We have given this example many times. So I think it's clear that we all want to be the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no problem. I had given the frequency from Raghib al-Isfahani, not the frequency, but the four types of ibad that he had mentioned. But when I looked in one of the, I think I sent this already in the message group, there are actually 8 aspects of abd. And this is a little bit technical, but it will help us a lot to understand what we are saying if we looked at these 8 aspects of abd and then the 7 aspect of the plural ibad. So that our station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely clear, and then we will inshallah move on to Na'budu, Iyaka Na'budu. So if you have looked at this, these 8 aspects, the first one is in kuntum fi raybin mimma nazzalna ala abdina. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word abd for the Prophet ﷺ. Alhamdulillah allazi anzala ala abdihi al-kitab. Tabaraka allazi nazzala al-furqana ala abdihi. So alaysa Allah bikafa abd. So all of these are directly addressing or directly associating the word abd with the Prophet ﷺ. The second is Nuh alayhi salam. Innahu kana abdan shakura. This is the station of Nuh alayhi salam. He is abd and he is grateful. Fakazzabu abdina wa qalu majnuna wazdujir. Surah Al-Qamar. Again Nuh alayhi salam. The third is Al-Khidr alayhi salam. Fawajada abdam min ibadina. Fourth is Zakaria alayhi salam. Zikra rahmat rabbika abdahu Zakaria. The fifth is Dawood alayhi salam. Waskur abdina Dawood. Dil aidi innahu awwab. So these are the 2 stations of Dawood alayhi salam. He is the abd and he is awwab, the oft turning. Sulaiman alayhi salam, name al-abd innahu awwab. Again, same 2 stations for Dawood alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam. Ayub alayhi salam is the 7th kind mentioned. Uzkur abdana Ayub is nada rabbahu. وَقَوْلُوا إِنَّا وَجَدْنَاهُ صَابِرًا نِعْمَ الْعَبْدُ إِنَّهُ أَوَّابٌ. The 8th is Isa alayhi salam. إِنَّهُ إِلَّا عَبْدٌ فَنَمْنَا عَلَيْهِ وَجَعَلْنَاهُ مَثَلًا لِبَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. So these are the 8 specific usages of abd. Ibad is the plural, and there are 9 sorry, I said 7, 9 different kinds of usages of ibad. قل من حرم زينة الله التي أخرج لعباده. So Jamil ibad, yani first is the mushrikun, the second is all ibad min al mushrikin wal kuffar, whether they are mushrikin or kuffar, yani the whole humankind is the second. The third is the makhluk, the what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. إن الذين تدعون من دون الله عبادا أمثالكم. The fourth kind is قل عبادي الذين آمنوا يقيموا الصلاة قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم. This is the plural form used for the believers who are truly the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, in Surah Yusuf, min ibadin al-mukhlasin. So ibad is a family of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Illa ibadaka minhum al-mukhlasin. So the sixth is kuffar. Ba'athna alaykum ibadilana uli ba'sin shadid. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Bakht Nasr and his people, and Ba'athna alaykum ibadallana uli ba'san shadid. Again, the malaika are also called bal ibadu mukramun. The malaika is called the ibad. So that was the seventh. The eighth is Khawasul Rahman. وَعِبَادَ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ, we just mentioned this ayah, the slaves of Allah, of the Rahman, are those who walk on this earth in humility. So these are the khawas, these are the elect of Ar-Rahman. And finally, the ninth is Ibrahim, wa Ishaq, wa Yaqub, alayhimus salam, wazkur ibadana, and mention our slaves, Ibrahim, wa Ishaq, wa Yaqub. So all of them are together called the ibad. So these are the 9 plurals. So the question is, do we want to be among them or not? Let's go now to the actual ayah. Iyyaka na'budu. Iyyaka na'budu. So we stopped, we are again going to Razi, we stopped is provide the benefits that he was mentioning, and I think we covered the first 5 of the 7. The sixth benefit is that know that the stations are reducible to 2. We all have stations, whether we are aware of those stations or not. We all have stations. Meaning, when we recite the Fatiha, every time we recite it, we are reciting it one more time, all newly. We are not repeating it. This needs to be totally understood, because mechanicality of the salah is a known disease. Mechanical movement of the limbs, mechanical movement of the tongue, all of these are known diseases of the heart. Anything that is repeated over and over loses the freshness And so scholars, there is nothing that has not been discussed. So the scholars have known that there is this problem of repetition becoming mechanical. And therefore, when we reach إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, when we reach this ayah, it is extremely helpful to reorient our hearts towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because now we are directly addressing Him. The first three ayahs we were addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a ghaib, in the absence, but now we are standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope this much is clear. That when we reach this ayah, whether in our salah or outside reciting this Fatiha, this is the ayah when we are directly addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, told that my voice is cutting off. Is that correct? For everyone or just one person? Is my voice fine for this on the chat? If you could just say yes, no. So the voice is cutting off. The internet then must be our internet. We can try to reconnect if you have. I'm just going to end the session and restart it. Hopefully that will just, because this is very important. Okay, it fluctuates but does not cut off. Okay, it's better now. Okay, I can bring the microphone closer as well. Let's then continue. When we are at the stage of إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, Imam Razi says that know that your state is Ma'rifatul Rububiyyah wa Ma'rifatul Abudiyyah. And here it is the knowledge of the Rububiyyah, of the Lordship, and the knowledge of the servanthood. When these are combined, they represent the covenant, they represent the mithaq. Wa awfu bi ahdi, ufi bi ahdikum. You fulfill my covenant, my promise, and I will fulfill your promise. And the marifah of the Lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was in the first three verses. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. And now we are transferring from the ghaib to the presence by Marifatul Abudiyyah. From the Rububiyyah to the Abudiyyah. Now, this knowledge of our servanthood also has a starting point and an end point. So when we say Iyyāka na'budu, every time we say Iyyāka na'budu, if it is a new utterance, if it's not mechanical repetition, then we are presenting ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a state of being the abd. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. So the benefit of coming into the presence from the ghaib also is followed by إياك نستعين, of seeking his help. And the classic question that was raised early on, as I mentioned, was when we say إياك نعبد, we worship you. We worship is a very poor translation. When we are in the state of abudiyah, that in itself required the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Abu Jahl also heard this Fatiha, but he was not able to be in the state of abudiyah. Those who were able to raise themselves to the status of being the abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could only do so with his help. Then the question is why the help is mentioned after we have met, after the stage of being the abd. And there are several answers which have been given. Razi, of course, listed many of them. The interesting thing is that this is not just Razi's brilliant mind asking and responding. This is something that Imam al-Tabari also has, Qurtubi has it, Vaidavi has it. So this was a general question that was raised and answers were given. The first of these, what Razi mentions, is the best kind of request is the one that is made directly. So when we are going to ask someone for something, especially if we're going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we acknowledge our abudiyah before we even say we want your help, that makes it more appropriate to ask someone after acknowledging our station in respect to the one from whom we are asking. Because this is the best, this is a very significant asking. Iyaka na'budu, therefore, we are acknowledging our station before even saying, please help us. Like Adam alayhi salam said, ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. From the beginning of the surah, this is the second aspect, from the beginning of the surah until we say Iyaka na'budu, as we said before, is praise. And now after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are commencing the su'al, the question, what we want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying, you are our Rabb and we are your slave. Iyaka na'budu is the acknowledgement of our being the slaves. What is it that we are asking? Iyaka nasta'een. إياك نستعين. We normally just quickly recite this, إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. But if we ponder and reflect on nasta'in, this is a huge asking. Built into this is the acknowledgement that we are directly asking the one other than whom no one can help us. We are acknowledging that our very ability to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could not have been without his help. And this Razi, it's beautiful how he not only has this rational explanation, he also has textual proof for what he is saying. The textual proof is seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is Surah Al-Araf, ayah 128. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, Ista'inu billah, he himself has said. Now, all of this, I think we have discussed this question several times, and this is a question that everyone has to sort of internalize. For this is not, there is no answer that can satisfy such questions. But because these questions were raised very early, those who were determinists, the Qadaris and the Jabaris, Al-Jabariya wal-Qadariya, they had huge problems with this. And as I said before, أما الجبرية فقالوا لو كان العبد مستقلا بالفعل لما كان للاستعانة على الفعل فائدة. So those who are the Jabariya said that if the servant were capable of autonomous action, there would be no benefit in seeking help to perform it. Whereas the Qadaris, they said that seeking help is only appropriate if the servant is basically capable of doing this action, but seeks the help of others due to difficulty. These are existential questions for everyone. Those who are able to transcend these questions and just do the deed, I think they are in a very good station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But those who are struggling with performing the salah, it may be helpful for them to, number one, realize that they are not the first to come across these questions. Number two, that the answers are there. And number three, there is no point in reinventing the wheel. We cannot even do that. So the best thing is to really sincerely seek guidance and help from the tradition which has provided the answers. There are many responses, the fact that we are standing in prayer, we are standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are conscious of uttering these du'as as if we are doing that for the first time. And yet we also know that the shaitan is constantly, he's just looking for that moment of forgetfulness to attack the heart and take us away from the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and remind us of what we need to do just after the salah. So all of those things are part of nasta'in. They are part of our seeking the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this really shows that we are we as human beings are literally incapable of completing an act without the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ said that Qalbul Mu'min bayna asba'in min ashabir Rahman, the heart of the believer is between the two fingers of the Rahman. It just shows us that there is really nothing we can do without the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is also the station of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was tied up and he was going to be thrown in the fire. And Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and asked if he need any help. Halaka min haja, do you have any need? Jibreel alayhi salam said, Amma ilayka fala. And so he said, none from you. And then Jibreel alayhi salam said, Salhu, and then ask him, meaning ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the answer of Ibrahim alayhi salam was, Hasbi man su'ali alimhu bihali. SubhanAllah, this is a very high station. His knowledge of my condition, of my state, suffices me from asking. So in that moment of being in front of the fire, tied up, about to be catapulted into the fire, even Jibreel alayhi salam's help is not sought. And when Jibreel alayhi salam tested, this is a test for Ibrahim alayhi salam because he is Al-Khalil. Al-Khalil is the one who has absolutely submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is nothing in his heart. Khalwa is that like total emptiness. So at that point, this was a test of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Would he ask for help? And this increased his station in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we say Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'een, when we say Iyyaka nasta'een, we are acknowledging our station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are asking him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us this dua, and he of course had taught this to Ibrahim alayhi salam, but in our stages of traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we want to travel and attain that station of absolute reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave all our needs to him, because he knows them, whether we acknowledge it or not. He knows our needs, but still we are taught to keep asking. Razi says that Ibrahim alayhi salam was tied up, he was going to be thrown in the fire of Nimrud. But think of yourself and think of the real fire. Just as Ibrahim alayhi salam refused the help of anyone but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he didn't ask, but he still sought his help because he said he knows my condition. I don't need to ask him. That is the station of Al-Khalil. But it's not that he wasn't even asking for help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was just saying, Ya Allah, you know my state. You know what I need. Ya Naru kuni bardum masalaman ala Ibrahim. Ya Nar, O fire, be cool to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Bardum masalaman. And so, just think of our own station. Just think of our own state where our hands and feet are tied with dunya, with our desires. He says, just think of yourself being unable to walk, and then you say, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. You say, Iyyaka nasta'in. And so, as if you are saying that you followed the action of Al-Khalil, you followed the action of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, Iyyaka nasta'in, and you said, Iyaka, because it has hasr, none other than you, we seek help, Iyya la asta'inu bi ghayrik, and that is similar to what your friend did. He didn't ask help from from Jibreel alayhi salam. So we are actually following in the steps of your friend, and because you said, "Oh fire, be cool," and safety for Ibrahim, so we too ask you to save us from the fire of the help from the hellfire, and deliver us to your Jannah. So, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. I hope there are lots of other benefits and explanations of this ayah that I hope we have covered for our benefit. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open for us. I'm sorry for the internet connection, but if I'll look at the recording, and if the recording is also the problem, then I have the audio file. Inshallah, the recording uploaded would be okay. Are there any questions? Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. I hope Allah has granted us this opening, that number one, every time we say Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, we pause, we utter this ayah as if we are saying it for the first time. It's not a repetition. Number two, we have this insight into the station of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who didn't want to ask anyone, and we also say Iyyaka. We also say just only from you. And this takes us to the stage of Hasbi Allah. Hasbi Allah is the station of reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all our needs. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Are there any questions? Indeed, the question is, can we read this ayah as a zikr and dua during difficult times? Definitely. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in is a beautiful dua, seeking help in all our situations. Inshallah. And also the understanding that this asking this dua should lead us to the station of Hasbi Allah. That station, Hasbi Allah. Next time, inshallah, we are going to begin Ihdinas Sirat al-Mustaqim. Begin what is it that we are asking when we are saying we na'budu, we are your ibad. We ask you, what is it that we are going to ask? We are going to ask Ihdinas Sirat al-Mustaqim. This one ayah, this asking covers every single thing we need. Ihdinas Sirat al-Mustaqim. The last ayah is actually an explanation of the Sirat. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim, guide us to the straight path, is the translation. It's a very poor translation, like all translations are. But this is the sirat, because once we are guided, and within this dua, just not to guide us to the straight path, is also to help us to walk on this straight path, because everyone has just this path. Everyone has a path. And at the end of the path, there are only two places where we can go. We are all travelers, and when we reach the end, there is left or right. And so built into this Ihdinas siratal mustaqim is the dua of going to the right place. We'll see how that is built in, inshallah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. يا الله أنت حليم كريم عظيم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربي اغفر وارحم أنت خير الراحمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.